In this screencast, I'm going to show how to create a command plugin. Part of that process is also useful if you're creating any sort of plugin, so it's worthwhile watching at least the start of this in order to see how you get your plugin started, your project started. So the first thing we need is a copy of BladeRunnerJS locally. So I'm going to unzip a recent build that I've got. So in there you'll see that we have just basic stuff. Apps is where your apps go. Licenses for any licenses of projects that we've got that we also use, and the SDK is where you'll find things like the executable command BladeRunnerJS or BladeRunnerJS command and a bunch of other things. So the next thing we need to create a project is we can copy the BladeRunnerJS plugin bootstrap. Download that. And unzip it, and I'm going to move the output of that to something called list apps plugin, because I'm going to create a list apps plugin. So that the plugin will list all the applications associated with the BladeRunnerJS install. In there you'll see we've got a bunch of Gradle stuff, so we're going to use Gradle to help us do this. So the first thing we need to do is initialize our plugin, passing in some properties. We're going to pass in BladeRunnerJS properties. This is where is our BladeRunnerJS, our BladeRunnerJS install. So that's where we are. Oh. So that initializes things and it creates a properties file. So you can see where our BladeRunnerJS install is. The next thing we need to do is we're going to use Eclipse. So I'm going to run the Eclipse command. And what that's done is that's created a class path, a .project file, and a settings file for us. Now if we go into Eclipse, I can import this existing project, this project that's been created for us. And here we have all the information we need. So that's where our source is going to go. We're going to have resources in here, and I'll show how to use that in a minute. But the first thing we'll do is we'll create a class. And I want to use a helper superclass, an args parsing command plugin. So this class implements the command plugin interface, which is required. Any plugin should implement a plugin interface. But this provides additional helper methods, which I'll use later. So we've now got our class. I need to provide the name of the command which we're going to execute. I'm also going to provide a description. So we've now got the basics in place in terms of functionality. The next thing we need to do is create a services file. Now this is part of Java called the service registry, and we use this at the moment to detect plugins. Now, in order for these plugins to be picked up, you need a file which is named the fully qualified namespace of the plugin that you're implemented. So here we're org.bladerunnerjs.commandplugin. So I'm going to create a new file. org.bladerunnerjs.commandplugin. And the contents of that needs to be the fully qualified namespace of the class which implements that interface. So org.bladerunnerjs.demo.listAppsPlugin. There we go. So we've now got our services file. Now we can execute Gradle copy to BRJS. So what that does is that builds the project and copies the jar file to conf/java. Now that's where plugins have to be located at the minute. Also, the need to do this copy to BRJS step is something that we want to get rid of, and we'd like you to just be able to add the project that you're doing to the class path of BRJS, so you can basically just build and run your application from within your IDE. But at the moment we need to run this copy to BRJS task. Now if we run the BRJS executable, it will provide us with a list of commands that are there, and you'll see that we've got list apps. So that's the plugin that we've just created. So there we go, it's picked up. That's great. Now we actually want to implement some functionality. So with the BladeRunnerJS toolkit, there's something called the BRJS model. So the model provides a representation of the toolkit, the applications that are in there, and all sorts of things. I don't want to go into that now, but I just want you to be aware of this model object. So I'm going to create a local field for that. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to create a reference to a logger. And here we need to pass in a logger type. So this is going to allow us to filter the debug output from the logger. So this is going to be really handy in the future. It's not that relevant now. Go. Now I just need to create my field. Now, at the moment, we're not actually going to do anything with the command argument, so I'm going to ignore that for now. But what we do want to do is list applications. So I'm just going to create a call method that doesn't currently exist, which is going to pass a title for my output, and I want to also pass in brjs.apps. Now that's a list of the applications associated with the model that I'm referencing. Now let's create that method that doesn't exist at the minute. And in there, I'm going to use my logger to output a title and a new line. And then I'm going to loop through the apps. And just output their name. App.getName. So all I'm doing is just looping through the apps that are available. Now if I jump back over to my command line, terminal, and export, or build and copy the jar, and then execute the BRJS command again. That's fine, it's still there. Now if I actually specify that I want to execute that command, you'll see we get this apps output. Now the problem here is we don't actually have any apps. So if I create an app and then execute that command, I get foo listed. If I create another app, I then get foo and bar. So the two apps are now listed. Now next I want to demonstrate how to actually use arguments. So we're using something called the JSAP, which is Java parser, argument parser. Let me just quickly jump over to, we've got a page in the documentation which provides some basic information, the getting started point for that. But the main thing here is that you've got reference to the documentation, the third-party documentation for this. So if we jump back in here, what we need to do is we need to tell the args parser about the arguments and flags that our plugin accepts so that it knows what to do with them. Args parser dot set. We need to define the parameters that ours accepts. So we need to register them. Now in our case, I want to provide a switch, so just kind of an on and off option. So this switch is part of the JSAP library, and I want to say whether or not the system applications associated with the install are also listed. Now I need to reference that, bring in the name, the import statement, and then I can do dot. I want a short flag, so just if someone provides S as the flag, that'll execute, and also I want to provide some help text. There we go. So I've now registered this parameter. Now if I quickly jump over here and I build my plugin again, and then I want to get help information for that, you'll see I also see that there's an S flag, minus S flag for system apps, and here I can see that it says show the system applications. So now I want to use it. So within the do command, I'm going to check to see whether that flag's been passed. Now part of this framework provides a nice little helper so that I can get specific arguments already cast. So in my case, because it's a switch, it's a boolean. I provide the full name for that. I'm going to use my list apps and provide the title of system apps, and I'm probably also going to put in an extra new line. And then in here I do BladeRunnerJS.system apps. So I'm also going to list out the system apps. So that's just done. We're now going to list out all the applications by default, and then if the system apps flag is passed, we're also going to list the system applications. So if I just execute, I need to copy, copy to BladeRunnerJS. So that will build it and copy to the correct directory so the plugin's picked up. We can still execute list apps, but we can also do list apps with -s, which will show we also have dashboard and dashboard services part of our system applications. That's the end of this screencast on creating a plugin to run with BladeRunnerJS. In this case, we showed how to get set up with a new project. Now that project could actually represent any type of plugin. In our case, we did a command plugin and one that parsed arguments. But you can use the start of this screencast obviously to get you started with any type of plugin.